we're going to go ahead and introduce our next presenter, which is our comrade Elikya Ngoma, who is the Haiti expert of the African People's Socialist Party, as well as the editor of the Haiti column in the Burning Spear newspaper, to talk about the conditions faced by Africans in Haiti after natural disasters specifically. So, comrade Elikya Ngoma, let's hear from you.
Uhuru, thank you, Director Akile, for that introduction. To begin, my name is Elikya Ngoma, and I am a member of the African People's Socialist Party. And as Director Akile said, I am the Haiti expert of the African People's Socialist Party and Haiti editor of the Burning Spear newspaper, as was assigned to me by my leadership, Chairman Omali Ishatella, who leads the African People's Socialist Party. On Saturday, August 14, 2021, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake shook the grounds of Southwest Ayiti in between the Nip and Sud departments of the country. There has since been reported over 900 aftershocks, 2,248 deaths, 12,763 injuries, 329 missing people, and over 129,000 damaged buildings and homes. This earthquake immediately brought to the minds of many people the horrors faced by African people in Haiti during the 7.0 magnitude earthquake in the country's capital of Port-au-Prince on January 12, 2010, where over 300,000 African people lost their lives and about 1 million others were left homeless, most of them still homeless today. Many of us were also immediately reminded of the various forms of exploitation and humiliation we experienced, such as the profiteering done by opportunists and parasitic organizations who would raise money in the name of African people in Haiti without us ever seeing as much as a red cent, the kidnapping of our children by United States missionaries, the poisoning of our water with the cholera disease by the United Nations, which would plague our people until 2019, infecting over 820,000 people and claiming just 200 lives short of 10,000. And the betrayal of countries like Chile and Brazil, who would accept over 30,000 Haitian immigrants, only to have our people living in concentration camps and even stables. For the Haitian population abroad, we were not only concerned for our families back in Haiti, but for Haiti in general and the future of our whole people there. We were asking ourselves and one another, how many more tragedies can a single place take before it is completely ruined and just doesn't exist anymore? When many people discuss earthquakes and hurricanes in Haiti in particular, they often lead with conspiracy theories as opposed to scientific and materialist analyses. Haitian Christians and Vodouisans argue about whether the earthquakes and hurricanes are punishments from God or for our voodoo or consequences of our conversion to Christianity. This argument was especially loud on the August 14, 2021 date, because it also marked the 230th anniversary of the August 14, 1791 voodoo ceremony at Br.A.very, where enslaved Africans met to plan the African Revolution of Haiti and swore to choose death over betrayal. A week after the ceremony, on August 21st, 1791, the Africans waged a 12-year-long struggle against colonial slavery and defeated 3 European superpowers, the British, Spanish, and the French. And in late 1803, the Africans won the first workers' revolution in the world. Many forces outside of Haiti have the same debate about which belief is to blame, but many others conclude that these acts of nature are perhaps not natural at all, but instead are manufactured by the High Frequency Active Oral Research Program, HAARP, as another one of white power imperialism's attacks on Haiti. None of these theories are legitimate analyses of our situation in Haiti, nor do any of them provide solutions for our people, because they are all centered in the abstract. It is not a matter of which belief system Africans in Haiti do or should subscribe to, or if HAARP has created a special type of machinery to target us, but instead it's a matter that our country's continuous impoverishment by the colonial entities and their neocolonial white power and blackface puppets who steal all of our wealth and resources for their own benefit, meanwhile fostering a country with a severe lack of infrastructure that would protect us, that makes it impossible for us to be protected, or lessen the damage done by these natural occurrences. The question of infrastructure in Haiti is especially important in terms of history, recent history, because the 2018 to 2019 mass resistance was against the government, the then governments, and the governments before, waste of the Petro-Caribe funds, which was supposed to go to building infrastructure throughout the country. So the only powers that we are subjected to are the colonial powers known as the United States, the United Nations, France, the entire white power system, and the neocolonial system that must be first overthrown for us to have freedom, self-determination, and Black power over our own lives. Just like in 2010, people around the world wanted to know where they could donate resources to aid the Africans in Haiti. Many people knew right away to avoid the American Red Cross, which in 2010 raised over $500 million that never went towards building anything in Haiti, as well as the Hillary Clinton Foundation, which raised and stole another $30 million. So what ended up taking place is a mixture of some people looking for organizations that could be trusted to use these resources to the benefit of the people, and others avoiding organizations altogether, looking for individual or small group efforts that they could directly contribute to, and the remaining saying that it's 6 of one and half a dozen the other. Ayiti is referred to as being a capital of NGOs and has the statistic of being the country with the most non-governmental organizations or NGOs per capita in the world. Before the January 12, 2010 earthquake, there had already been over 10,000 NGOs in Haiti. And by 2020, that number doubled to roughly 20,000. In a December 2011 Burning Spear newspaper article titled "International NGOs Serve Imperialism, Africa Needs Own Independent Development Organizations," NGOs are explained to be global contractors hired to execute the foreign policies of imperialism. These 20,000 NGOs are not working to undermine the social system that imposes poverty onto African people, nor are they working in the interests of the African masses of Haiti, which is made obvious by the perfect negative correlation that exists between the decrease of our wealth and resources and the increase of NGOs in our country. In addition to the NGOs that prey on Haiti and may even pray for catastrophic moments like natural disasters, there was where they know that an influx of resources will be coming in from all over the world. Individuals who learned from the 2010 earthquake realized how sympathetic people can be after these kind of disasters and began to create their own, illegitimate GoFundMe and other crowdfunding fundraisers to just fill their own pockets up. In Ayiti, where the first few days after the August 14, 2021 earthquake hit, locals were making their way to the affected areas to dig people out of rubble and make donations of water, food, clothing, etc. After after those first few days, the state-sponsored militia known as gangs and bandits began creating blockages where the donors and volunteers would have to pay them before being allowed entry to the affected areas, or they would just have to turn away altogether. And so one of the first and popular cases of this in a social media rant, one of Haiti's singers, Widle Octavius, known as Wid, revealed that he traveled from the United States back home to give his hand in aid, and said that at the point that he was blocked by the gangs, he went to local Police Nationale d'Haïti, PNH, or Haitian National Police forces, and to let them know what was going on. And their response was, "Why didn't you just come to us from the beginning?" So this kind of response was not too strange for those of us who already knew the kind of relationship between the police and the bandits as arms of the state in deepening the oppression of our people. And so, there is not a quick fix kind of solution for African people in Haiti. The theory of African internationalism developed by Omali Ishitala, chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, helps us to realize that the problems that our people face in Haiti are caused entirely by the same colonial social system that our ancestors fought against almost 220 years ago. And therefore, our only solution is to complete the mission initiated by our fierce leaders, such as the relentless and uncompromising Jean-Jacques Dessalines. And SG Louisi actually just spoke to a lot of the things I would have spoken to in terms of that revolution. So I will say that now we have to join the revolutionary organization whose work is led by revolutionary theory, and is and also dedicate ourselves to organizing and fighting for the liberation of Africa and African people around the world, such as such an organization can only be the African People's Socialist Party, which is located throughout the African world. Point number one of the African People's Socialist Party's 14-point working platform, titled "What We Want, What We Believe," states, "We want peace, dignity, and the right to build a prosperous life through our own labor and in our own interest." And I think, that is just a very important point, especially looking at the word dignity that is placed there, because on top of, as said up until now, the natural occurrences of earthquakes and hurricanes and landslides and mudslides, and all of these things that happen in places like Haiti and throughout the African world, the dehumanization and the humiliation that comes after, knowing that you're in this country with leaders that have never worked in your interest, that don't work in your interest. You are homeless, and people who were made homeless 10 years ago as a result of the 2010 earthquake are still homeless today. Then you have the other situation of those who are forced to leave the country to go into other countries that welcome them with, it looks like it's welcoming them with open arms, but they actually just go and live in very brutal and, humiliating and dehumanizing kind of situations. So just to say, we want the peace, dignity, and the right to build a prosperous life through our own labor in our own interests. We remain confident that once this is achieved, our people will never know the type of impoverishment, devastation, or exploitation mentioned earlier ever again. Freedom in our lifetime. Coupe tête boule caille, which means cut heads, burn houses. Vive Haiti, long live Ayiti. Vive Revolution, long live the revolution. Uhuru, and join the African People's Socialist Party at apspuhuru.org. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Comrade Elikya Ngoma, thank you so much for your presentation.